So the polyvagal theory is called that because it's about the vagus nerve. And some people call the vagus nerve the body's superhighway. So it's the most vital part of the parasympathetic system, which is that system that's in charge when we're calm. And it carries information between the brain and the organs. And as you can see on that image there, the vagus nerve goes from the brain through the face and down through the torso. And that's important to remember because it's why it also affects our facial expressions. So you might sometimes see that when children are really stressed, their faces can become very blank. They kind of shut down almost, especially if a child's under a very high level of stress and they go into kind of a shutdown. They might start to look very expressionless. And that's because if the vagus nerve isn't activated, it's really difficult to do kind of warm and friendly facial expressions and to interact in a social way. So polyvagal theory kind of builds on this idea of the rest and digest or the fight and flight, but it expands on it a little bit more by talking about these three different states. So according to polyvagal theory, the key to self-regulation is a well-functioning autonomic nervous system. And what that really means is that your body is doing a good job of deciding when the sympathetic system needs to be activated and when the parasympathetic system needs to be activated. So it's not the case that the sympathetic system is bad and the parasympathetic system is good and we always want to be parasympathetic. We need both, and it's about being able to transition fluidly between the two. So polyvagal theory talks about these three different states. So mobilized is when the sympathetic nervous system is activated. So that is when we're in fight or flight. But importantly, what this theory kind of explains is it's not always necessarily a bad thing to be mobilized, for your sympathetic nervous system to be activated. Sometimes it can actually be quite good. So for example, if you are going to sit an exam, a little bit of stress and nerves about that exam can actually enhance your performance. Or if you're a child and you're lining up on the start line for sports day and you're going to be in a race, your sympathetic nervous system will be activated, you're mobilized, but in a positive way. You've got that adrenaline, you're feeling a bit nervous, and you're going to do well because of that, because you've got that surge of kind of adrenaline and cortisol that's going to maybe give you that little extra edge when you run your race. The difference between when being mobilized is a good thing or a bad thing is about whether or not we feel safe. So if we feel emotionally safe and physically safe in our environment, being mobilized, having our sympathetic nervous system activated is okay. But if we don't feel safe and our sympathetic nervous system is activated, that's when we can go into that fight or flight mode, or this other mode that polyvagal theory talks about, which is immobilized. So that's actually when stress levels become so high, you're kind of beyond fight or flight and you go into shutdown. So this is when children just become very kind of lethargic and unresponsive. They're not really expressing any emotions at all. Or as an adult, if you're under really, really high levels of stress, you get to the point where you don't cry, you don't shout, you've kind of started to shut down and not really feel anything at all. This is when we're immobilized. And then finally, there's this kind of optimal state, which is when we're relaxed. So this is when our sympathetic nervous system is in charge. We've got normal heart rate. Everything's functioning biologically the way it should. And we feel relaxed and engaged and happy. And it's when we're in that relaxed zone that we're really able to access all of our brain functions. We're able to be creative. We're able to engage with other people and be pro-social. And a feeling of physical and emotional safety is completely essential for us to be in that state. So it can be helpful when we're working with children to think about these three states and which one they're in. Are they mobilized? Are they immobilized? Or are they relaxed? And as I said, transitioning between these three states is normal. None of us are in a relaxed state all the time. That's just not a realistic expectation. So it's not a problem to go into one of the other states if you're able to transition back out of it. It's when people become stuck in one of these immobilized or mobilized states that other problems develop. So this is where kind of anxiety and depression and things like that come in, is when people become trapped in one state and they can't transition back out of it without a lot of support. So this is just another quote from Polyvagal Theory. So often we want children to play nice, as we call it. You know, we want them to get along, we want them to follow the rules, and we want them to, you know, collaborate with each other and follow what we say as adults. So playing nice comes naturally when our neuroception, by that I mean that barometer that's scanning the environment for cues, detects safety and promotes physiological states that support social behaviour. However, prosocial behaviour will not occur when our neuroception misreads the environmental cues and triggers physiological states that support defensive strategies. So what that means by physiological states is all those things I showed on that previous diagram, all the things that are happening with the heart rate and the stress hormones and all of that. Those are our defensive strategies. After all, playing nice is not appropriate or adaptive behaviour in dangerous or life-threatening situations. In these situations, humans, like other mammals, react with more primitive neurobiological defense systems. Okay, so that's basically saying when we're in fight or flight, of course we can't follow rules and be kind to other people and all of those things because we're just trying to survive. So to create relationships, humans must subdue these defensive reactions to engage, attach, and form lasting social bonds. Humans have adaptive neurobehavioural systems for both prosocial and defensive behaviours. So Stephen Porges was one of the first kind of neuroscientists to really unpick this idea that the way we behave is largely dictated by what's going on inside our bodies biologically. And certainly when I was teaching, I was never ever taught this. So when children were misbehaving in my class, I never once thought what's going on inside their body. I only thought about them in terms of their minds. I never really thought about their bodies at all. So I just kind of thought, well, this child is choosing to break the rules, or this child is choosing to be really unkind to that other child. And what I didn't realise is that actually our physiological state, what's going on in our autonomic nervous system, determines the kind of behaviours that we can express at any given time.